And the only thing that will wake them up and crash down everything
Come
we
on.
did to get in their
Say it,
head
Dips.
is if they find out who
Say
they
it,
really are.
Dips.
Do not let them see this letter because they will know who they really are. And then all of this will come crashing down.
Bruh.
If I call you bro, that means I love you, bro. That means I'll go to war with you.
Fire, baby.
The reason why you need to know your identity is because when you know who you are, people don't get to define it for you. So when I tell you guys who you have in your circle is important.
You're listening to the Bros to Men podcast with Cameron Persad, Jeff T. Osborne, and Roy Rand.
Hey, what's going on, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Bros to Men podcast.
What's the deal?
Listen, you already know it's your boy J.O.
Cam, let's get with
Boy,
y'all.
Roy.
Hey, man, a.k.a. Dips.
Yes, sir.
And we are excited because, listen, the love that we've gotten from the last podcast, the views that we've gotten, the comments that we've gotten, got a little bit, not heated per se, but this little disagreement, it was bound to happen. Look,
They have something to say.
Nice the last couple of because the conversations we have on the phone are next level. So listen, we gonna segue into this new episode, and I'm excited because we're actually gonna kind of tailgate off of the first one or the last one that we did. It's kind of like a part 2, if you will. And so mine, the hoarse voice, I was screaming at my daughter's playoff soccer game. My wife was coaching, so great job, sir. Love. Yeah. But we're going to hop into it. Okay, so black pill. Last episode, we talked about don't swallow the black pill. Black pill, for those of you who are just tuning in, the black pill is the pill that people tend to swallow. It's this type of ideology of how we kind of gauge our life. Are you blue pill? Are you red pill? Are you black pill? And so the black pill is pretty much there's no hope to life. There's no way to get better. This is like the best life can get. Even if your life is terrible. It is what it is, right? Love is dead. Life is dead. You have no life in that. Then you have the blue pill, which is Mr. Optimistic. That's kind of me. I'm the guy who's always looking at life with a full glass or a glass half full, if you will. And then you have the red. Red is like, yo, it is what it is. If you're playing ball and you suck, right? It's that type of mindset.
Give it up.
Right. And so one of the things that I love about our podcast, though, fellas, is that, you know, at Bros to Men, when you talk about that, we're talking about us going from just bros in the sense of us growing up, being young, to all of the things that help us to become the men that we are now, whether that's our faith, whether that's our love, whether that's our ideology, our different businesses that we run. And so we really wanted to touch different things. But this episode hit a bang with the viewers. This episode, I mean, it went ham in some of the comments. And so maybe we can kind of segue off of that and talk about some of these comments, because we had people that was like, yo, man, I agree with J.O. Nah, Dips is tripping. And some people like, yo, I kind of agree with Dips and what he's talking about. And so, Cam, you kind of like that middle. So give some of the comments, and then let's just segue into what were one of the biggest things that we hit that we were going to talk about today, man.
You know, what I thought was most interesting about the comments, a lot of times I think the comments reflect people's experiences, right? So, you know, same with the comments that Dips had in the last episode. He's speaking from his experience, right? What worked for him in his current situations, which is what I kind of love about our show as well. It's so dynamic across the table, right? So, you know, you have me in a relationship or someone's single, you got the married person, or, you know, whatever the case is, you're going to get that perspective straight up, right? So it's like, look, I don't know nothing about that 15-year marriage you talking about, bro. You going to get my experience, right? And then, you know, what Dips has going on, we're going to get into a little bit today, because I'm curious my dang self, you know, tell us a little something. So, but yeah, like you mentioned, the comments were, you know, well, shout out to the ladies, because they were chirping in.
Yeah, they were.
You know, yeah. And from what I was seeing, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, they tend to like someone a little vulnerable, and, you know, I want my man to open up and share with me. And I think we'll get into that a little bit too, because, we're just going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about that for sure, because everyone's perspective is so different based on experiences. So I don't know if you want to get into it and
I'm gonna defer this over to Dips and see what they say. So what one of the things that they were talking about. So I'm gonna tell you this comment that was left. One of the girls was like, "Hey, listen, I like my man to be vulnerable. That's kind of like what was the word she used? It wasn't like erotic, but she was like, oh, I really like that. That draws me in." in a different emotional way, and also kind of got her where she was like, yo, I really like that. I drive kind of gets her hot and bothered. So when we talk about that type of vulnerability, you were like, nah. So tell me your viewpoint, and let's dive in this for a little bit.
First off, people aren't going to tell you exactly what they mean in their language. So what most of the ladies, sorry ladies, are saying that they want isn't what they actually want. And we know that we know that just through growing up. When I say they, I'm generalizing, that there's always exceptions. There's beautiful people out there, but for the most part, they choose a-holes, right? And they came up, they chose those guys, and those guys treated them bad, but they biologically connect to someone who's more of an a-hole and isn't vulnerable because. At the end of the day, the mind wants survival. Everything's about survival. And if you feel like this person is going to mess up your survival, and it could be deep and unconscious, then I might have to bounce. I got my baby, I got my kids. I can't be around someone who can't be the rock and solid of this family or this relationship. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean I was incorrect in like being like, yo, vulnerability is crying, or I can't do this. But sometimes telling the truth makes you feel vulnerable, but that's not vulnerability. That's just telling the truth.
Right.
So you should tell the truth. Babe, bills are bad. I ain't got no overtime. Don't trip. I'm going to figure it out. The end. That's all you really need to say.
Okay, but you start off with a heavy statement, Brad. I know the girls that the women...
Right.
The ladies are going to chime in. And the reality is you said biologically. Now you're going into their biological makeup, and you're saying they say one thing, but what I heard you say, and you correct me if I'm wrong, they don't know what they really mean when they say that. That's what it sounded like to me. I don't know if it sounded like that to you.
They communicate based on their emotion and based on, they're more social. We're more analytical and just straightforward. They're more social. So the social construct is I want my man to be vulnerable right now. So people are saying that because that's what's hot. But at the end of the day, deep down, you don't want that. You want someone who can be a provider, who can protect you, and he can be vulnerable to an extent in telling the truth. But at any point, if you get that deep feeling that I'm not safe, you're going to want to bounce, and you're going to unconsciously self-sabotage that relationship so you have a reason to bounce.
Okay.
And it wasn't my fault. He was doing this or he was doing that, and you don't hold it down like you should.
So you said something interesting. You said a lot of times people mistake honesty for vulnerability.
Yes.
And that could be a great point because, maybe women are saying, I want my man to be vulnerable. What they really want is just a man to keep 100 with them, right? Stop lying, stop beating around the bush, give me the facts, give it to me straight, right? So, in your own words, distinguish it. What's the difference between someone being honest and a man that's coming and being vulnerable? Like, what would distinguish the two differences?
Well, Dr. Brene Brown made vulnerability famous.
Right, she wrote books and books on it.
She wrote books about it.
TED Talks.
And I love her work. And you know me, I'm consuming everything, and so are you guys.
Yeah.
I read her books. I watched her that TED Talk. She has another one that's one of my favorites on the man in the arena. But when I really dive into it, it's really just telling the truth. And sometimes you feel vulnerable in telling the truth, but then we sometimes connect with people who had harder life experiences and had to be more vulnerable in telling their truth, and we don't connect with people who didn't really have it hard, and in telling their truth, sometimes they might sound arrogant, but at the end of the day, that's their truth as well. And so it's not their fault that they didn't go through something that made them feel vulnerable, but at the end of the day, you just want to be authentic, right? And if you feel vulnerable, that's really just on you. Just tell the truth, and that's how I feel about it, bro.
Look, so when I hear the word vulnerable, I'm linguistics. I'm language. Everything is language for me. And so when I hear the word vulnerable or vulnerability, Cam, you got your phone on you? You got that on you? I want you to look at the definition of vulnerable while we chopping it up so we can read the real definition. But here's my thought. When we hear the word vulnerable, it also comes into context, and it comes down to definition of what vulnerable is. Yeah. And so if the idea and what it's been taught is that if a man is vulnerable or to show vulnerability is a sign of weakness, because the constructs of how it was, whether it's in the animal kingdom, oh my gosh, this animal is rendered vulnerable because he's hurt, or they're rendered vulnerable because they're injured. Now we think and we take that same mentality into us when we hear vulnerable. It's like, yo, I'm injured, I'm weak. Yeah. So if I'm injured and I'm weak, I can't show my spouse that. I can't show my kids that when I'm injured and I'm weak. So that's the idea. But I see you over there. It looks like a loaded barrel. Tell me what.
Before you read that, in my experience, I've never had a point where I've been weak in my life.
Ooh, okay. Did you call it?
Yeah,
I never had a hell.
Okay, so
I'm reading this right here because what this is telling me is that you're making yourself open to something you may not be prepared for, right?
Okay, read that down. So, give it to me.
Making yourself susceptible to physical or emotional attack or harm.
Okay. Hold on now. So you're making yourself open to physical or emotional attack. Is that what it says?
Yeah.
So when you're vulnerable, you're opening yourself up to physical or emotional attack. Let's copy and paste this into the relationship.
Come on.
So if a man...
copy and paste.
So I just want to make sure I get this right. Yeah. So if a man shares in transparency the state of his emotional well-being, whether it's good or bad, he is leaving himself up for the potential of an attack of some type, whether it's emotional or physical.
And Dibs, you touched on this last episode, bro, where Dibs made a statement in part 1 where he said one of the hardest things for us to do is to put ourselves out there,
right?
Because when you do so, you make yourself susceptible to the criticism, right? The judgment.
I'm being vulnerable right now and sharing my perspective.
Right. Because you're leaving yourself open for attack.
I'm leaving myself open for attack, but it's not seen as being vulnerable based on the definition. I don't feel vulnerable right now. I'm just sharing my truth.
But you're still leaving yourself open for attack, which brings me back to what you were saying, is that if I don't want to be vulnerable or leave myself open, that means whether I'm saying something, making a statement, or holding a view, I leave myself open for attack, which means everybody in some state, whether you're gonna have a healthy relationship or not, you're gonna have to be vulnerable. You can't avoid being vulnerable, leaving yourself open for attack, whether you're ready for it or not, because love is one of the hardest things, because you gotta be willing to get hurt, and then after you get hurt, you gotta get back out there again. And so most relationships begin to get diluted, if you will, or become tainted, or they don't become authentic, because I would rather hold back what I feel. I would rather hold back what I really feel about the relationship, where we are in our life, our financial blueprint, because I'm afraid that if I really say what I'm going to say, then my spouse or my partner or somebody else, a business associate, is going to be able to hurt me, which means I would rather, for most cases, referring to people who take the black pill, I would rather live an unauthentic life and have the idea of safety rather than me being open and honest and the idea of being attacked. So here's my question then, because we're talking life, we're talking black pill, we're talking relationships. Why are people so afraid, in your guys' opinion, and I can talk and I can weigh this in, but why are so many people afraid of quote unquote being attacked when you are authentic, or you are true, or you're being, the word that I hear that's a twin to vulnerability is transparency.
Well, let's reverse engineer it. Let's start with success and then come back. And you have a successful relationship. So what is it about my sis that you feel okay to be open and vulnerable to her, even going back to the beginning days and in your marriage?
That's a good question right there. What made sis different?
Is it an existential thing, or is it something she did?
I think when you are in a relationship and you're both in that relationship for longevity, when you allow each other to see each other's flaws, it gives you the ability to know that I'm okay to be vulnerable or be transparent, because they're not pretending to be perfect. They're not pretending. See, I tell people, when you get in a relationship, you want to be with somebody for all 4 seasons.
Ooh, right.
right?
Yeah.
Winter, fall, spring, and summer. Because then you're going to see who they really are. And when you see who they really are, it's a matter of time before your true self shows. I don't care who you are. I don't care how great of a pretender you can be. We see it with athletes. We see it with actors. Why do you need a PR person to show you who you are? Oh, I'm so sorry. I just, stepped outside of my character. No. What happened is your facade couldn't keep up anymore. So your true self ended up showing through.
Right.
And so when we don't deal with these issues in our relationship, what happens is you just get around somebody long enough. And when you're around them long enough, the real them is going to show through. And the problem is we pretend when we see somebody who's perfect in the beginning of the relationship, whether it's business, no matter what it is, everybody's fine and dandy. Everybody is honky dory. Everybody's my best. Oh my God, their integrity is A1. Oh my God, they're so amazing, right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden you start seeing flaws. You start seeing things in their life like you're like, okay, hold on, like, wait, what's going on right now? And I have a saying that I say, when people show you who they are, pay attention.
Believe them.
Believe them.
Yeah.
You're right. And so when you asked me the question about Nadia and what allowed us to do this, we had longevity in the game. To where she saw me when I was running the streets. She saw me when I was in prison. She saw me when I was angry. She saw me when I was reckless. She saw every single season. And so
shout out to the sis.
Yeah,
man.
Shout out, baby. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Virtuous one.
Right.
Come on now.
So, but this is what I'm saying. So, and I tell everybody this. I want y'all to hear this because this is so key. Is in all of our relationships and where we are in life, the idea of vulnerability comes with time. And when you are around somebody long enough, you see their flaws and you love them past their flaws. Now, I'm not talking, there's a difference between seasons of flaws and cycles of flaws.
Yeah.
So
and mistakes.
And mistakes, right. And I would call mistakes like seasonal, right? You're in a season where you made a dumb mistake or you made a dumb decision. But when you keep repeating it, it's no longer a season, it's a cycle.
Right. Right.
And so I'm just saying, all in all, when you start talking about vulnerability and you saying leave yourself open for attack, you can't have love without having vulnerability. And vulnerability happens when you have a length of time where you see the flaws in an individual and you're open and honest and say, you know what, I'm flawed, not trying to pretend to cover it up.
A couple things that's coming to me is something that Kam used to always teach me when we were growing up was, when you first meet people, you don't meet them, you meet the representative. You don't meet them, you meet the representative.
You're getting the best version of that person.
You're getting the best version of them,
that's
right?
oily right there.
And one thing people do, I'll find, is they will try to get to know you to see where the chink in your armor is. Like, they don't really want to get to know you. They just want to kind of get around to be like, yo, I just want to see if he's a perfect pastor. Maybe he makes one mistake, and they just want to find something to make themselves feel better about not being on your level. And then lastly is, where is that point to where you go, you know what, I can open up, because nobody's perfect. But sometimes I guess some people come off as like trying to act like they're perfect. Nobody's.
You know what it is too? Like, I think there's almost like an unrealistic expectation about this word vulnerability, right? And I think if you talk to people, maybe specifically those like in the dating arena, there might be this like unrealistic expectation of the person you're involved with, where from day one, I expect you to be vulnerable with me, right? If you're not being vulnerable, you're not giving me your most authentic self. I'm not seeing the real Dips, or I'm not meeting the real Kam or the real Jeff, right? But we've also spoke about this in previous episodes, but I think it's important to qualify people in your life.
You gotta vet them.
You gotta vet them, right? So I've said this in other episodes where these are my brothers straight up, right? From 14 years old to the day we die. And it's not because I've known these dudes the longest, but we've been through war, right? You mentioned it, we've been through it. We were talking about some stories on the way up here, right? So for me, that's the reason why I call these dudes my brothers. They've qualified, right? They passed test after test, right? So at the end of the day, to me, they've earned that title brother. I'm not going to call just random people on the streets that title because, like I said, I've been to war with these cats, right? You name it, from violent situations, life on the line, to in the club blowing money, to becoming the mature family men, business owners, responsible men, right, that we've become. So I think dating is very similar. And I think a lot of people say men won't be vulnerable, but the truth is men are qualifying the women that they're involved with, vice versa, right? Women should be qualifying the men as well. So when I think about how the 20 plus years I've been dating, I've probably been vulnerable with one woman. And reason being is we've been through enough where I've qualified her to I feel comfortable enough being vulnerable. See, for me to be vulnerable with you, I have to respect your opinion and your input enough to care of what you get back.
But that part is the most scariest.
It is the scariest, but I think the reason that's why we qualify them, right? Because if I've been dating you, we've gone out a couple times, had a couple drinks, don't expect me to tell you my life story, what keeps me up at night, the things that wake me up out my sleep. You know what I mean? But if we've been through enough to where I respect you enough and actually think you're going to give me some type of input that's going to add some value to my life, that we can get to that point.
I'm having an aha moment because that word respect, bro. Because y'all know me, I'm stubborn. When I have an ideal, I'm locked in. But I respect you so much to where if you said something, I go, Roy, listen, that's Jeff.
Right.
You gotta listen.
Vice versa.
You gotta listen. You gotta listen.
Yeah.
That's Jeff. And then I could tear down whatever ego for someone I respect.
That's it.
And so now that's getting into time and vetting and things of that sort.
Right. And the vetting is so important too, bro, because, you know, we can go through any of our call logs, right? We know thousands of people.
Yeah.
But when I'm in a situation where I'm being emotionally challenged, spiritually challenged, in relationship I'm in, I'm like, bruh, I don't know if I can go through this, right? I'm looking for answers. I don't just scroll through someone I met and call a random number. It's these cats, right? Again, because it's that respect, it's the wisdom, it's the knowledge. I'm going to let you pour into me, right? So there's a big qualifying factor because you just can't let everyone pour into your life.
Okay, wait. Hold on then. So I'm the cat out of the whole entire group. Nadia and I will have been together we'll be together for 19 years. So I've been out of the dating game
2 decades in.
for 19 years.
Right.
So I'm talking to my little sis. And
it's diluted now, bro.
We talking. Hold on, I'm talking to my little sis, and we having conversations about this the guy that she's with. Great guy, I love him. Real cool cat, and great things. And we're talking. It's like, man, he's got all these qualities that I'm looking for, but I'm not gonna give him all of me just yet. Right, this was in the beginning. Now it's a different story. So I want to make sure you hear that, sis. Like, but this was in the beginning. So I don't want to talk to him about this and not this just yet. Now here's where I differ, and I feel like this is a lot different. Everybody's like, yo, I'm not just gonna give you all of me up front. Here's my problem with that: is if I'm not gonna get all of you, and I gotta piece out months in advance. By the time you give it to me, if I get all of you and I don't like you. We've wasted 3 months of our time.
Time wasted.
When we get to this place where you're like, okay, I'm not going to tell them everything about me. I'm not going to be completely open. I'm not going to completely share where I want to go with my life, what I want to do. Then how many of us get involved in relationships 6 months, 7 months down the line, and then all of a sudden you want to open up and say, here I am. And they're like, wait, hold on. If I knew this was you back 2 months ago, I would not have invested this time into being who you are. So on me and where I stand, it goes down even to the trust part. A lot of people are like, I've been burned so much, I'm no longer a trusting person. And in the last podcast, we talked about, no, it's not that you're not a trusting person. You gave your trust to somebody who was untrustworthy. And so you start putting these labels like, I'm not a trusting person, I'm not this person. But here's where I look at it, is I'm going to give you all the trust up front. And I'm going to watch for signs and signals to see whether or not. Now, notice what I'm talking about. When I'm saying trusting, it's like I'm trusting who I am to tell you where I'm going, what my beliefs are. Because right off the gate, if I'm telling you something that's a deep down dream of mine in my future, but I'm waiting till I want to cover that till I feel like you're invested in me, then when you start opening up that area to you, then you leave yourself open to say.
And that's vulnerability. Because when you do that, you're making yourself susceptible to being let down by this person.
But why burn all of this time instead of actually coming out right and saying, yo, this is who I am. This is where I want to go in my life. These are some of the things that have been challenges for me to be able to overcome. Can you rock with that? Because there may be some people who are like, yo, nah, my last girlfriend was like this. I ain't even going to take the time to be able to deal with that.
And so,
or boyfriend, vice versa.
Now we're to the root of the problem. Now we're to the root of the issue. Teasing the model down, it's time. And everybody's time might be a little different based on what trauma they went through, whatever they went through, and how much courage they have to be open.
Again.
But my brain, I'm not thinking the courage and all that. I'm thinking like, what time can I open up to this person? And it's like analytical to me. It's not really about the emotions or the feeling. You're saying go right away?
No. What I'm saying is be open and honest with who you are from the gate. Not try to slowly drip who you really are. If you goofy, like you said, they're going to give you your the most polished PR self. Right. So if you meet somebody and you're in the middle and like, well, hey, how you doing? Great night tonight. Hi.
Right.
You know, and you're trying to put on this whole persona, but when you're really a goofy and you're a cut up, then all of a sudden you go 6 months in, you feel like, okay, now's my time. Here's my big reveal. And then you start acting goofy. She going to be like, or he going to be like, what's your problem? Like, I don't rock like that.
That's real. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story. So as you guys know, I was transplanted 2 years ago, right? Organ transplant. So with the initial diagnosis, the doctors told me up front, hey, there's a possibility that this can return because there's a dormant gene that lies in your body, right? So there's always this possibility that's in the back of your mind of what I went through 2 years ago or maybe the last decade of years of dialysis and being in a physically poor state can return at some point, right? So I think a lot of times, I guess what I'm trying to tie it back to is I think when it comes to dating and friendships and relationships, again, our life experiences, I think, shape that. So every person that I was interested in moving forward from that moment forward, I had that conversation very early, right? Getting to know me. Tell me your life story about, I had an organ transplant X amount of months ago. There's a possibility it can return in 10 years. Let me tell you what my life was like prior to me being healthy. Because if you're going to rock with me, there may be a moment in time where I'm going to need you to go through that with me. And I'll be honest with you, there are some people like, that's a whole lot. You know, like I'm seeing these pictures, you're telling me these stories, what you couldn't do, you know, the limited capabilities that you had. And I had some people, and I have much respect for them, that were like, I'll be honest with you, Cam, I don't think that's for me, right? So basically what they're telling me is like, I love this healthy, energetic version of yourself. But to tell me that's who I'm going to get to love and that's who I'm going to get to know, and then like that, you're somebody else because your health has switched, I don't know if I'm ready for that. So that kind of goes to your point, right? That became a conversation I was having very early with people, not to scare people off, but the word I'm using is qualify, right? Qualify them very early.
Okay, so yesterday I was talking to my brother Hop, right? And we were having a conversation.
Yes, sir.
So we got on the conversation of marriage and relationships. I make this statement: there are two relationships that you can't book smart your way to. Two relationships. Number one, that's marriage. And number two, that's being a parent. You can't book your way through this and say, oh, this is a textbook marriage. This is a textbook, child. There are certain things that you only learn through experiencing it throughout time. There are things that I learned from Nadia that you experience through time. And I feel like vulnerability and transparency evolves as the individual evolves. There's different levels of vulnerability and transparency. And so maybe even the word vulnerability, if you take that out of dating, but there is, you can't. Because you got to be vulnerable. You're going to a date. You're laying yourself out there. You're trying to be your best, right? But then there's a moment of transparency, I feel. And when you're kind of guarding yourself off, like, you trying to be all mysterious, like, I don't know if I'm going to let you know the real me, then I feel like there's a moment where you're not transparent enough to say, this is what I'm looking for. This is where I'm going. You seem like a great guy, or you seem like a great girl. These are my goals. And I'm just going to be transparent in this moment that I've had a lot of people who have said X, Y, and Z. And because they've said that, my mindset is X, Y, and Z. And then that opens up a deeper realm of conversation that's more surface than just, oh, you look good tonight. Oh, where do you work at? Oh, what's your favorite color? Now you're going into conversation to find out intellectually and emotion. There's still a connection intellectually and emotionally that can happen on a first date to decide, is there even a spark there? But if you have surface conversations and you refuse to allow yourself to have a moment of vulnerability or a sense of vulnerability or even transparency, then you stop yourself from seeing somebody there. And I will venture to say this, I'm going to toss it to you, Dips, when I ask this question is, I feel like transparency, it takes more to be transparent and vulnerable than it does to try to cover up. It takes a stronger person to say, I'm going to open myself up. But watch this. Here was the biggest thing that I had to learn. And this was in business, I learned this. But I think it can be applied to marriage or dating, is when somebody rejects and says, I don't want to go on another date. They say, I don't want to close the deal with you. You may be in church and they may be like, the praise and worship team ain't for you, right?
Right.
They're not rejecting you as an individual. They're rejecting the ideas that you hold, or they're rejecting the proposal that you gave. But we take it so personal. Here's why I'm asking this question. Do you think that people who swallow the black pill have taken the people who said, oh, it's just not, you're not the right fit for me, you're not the right fit in life, or this deal wasn't the right deal for me, and they took that rejection and they internalized rejection and made it personal? So now they're saying, oh, there's something wrong with me, there's something wrong with me in relationships, I'm jinxed, so now I'm just going to keep taking this black pill?
That's exactly what they did. It's solipsistic. It's me, and how I feel and my thoughts don't match what the world feel and the world's thoughts. So forget the world. I'm gonna just go do me, not talk to nobody, not chase a great relationship, not chase that success. Because at the end of the day, if I just stay within me and only talk to myself, then I would never have to be vulnerable. I would never have to be open. And everything you were saying, just, you know, I was just kind of looking at my experience, and I'm starting to kind of realize kind of the mishaps that I have is, you know, me, I'm super disciplined. Gym, I'm eating a certain way. I don't really drink. And when I started drinking, it was to make other people feel more comfortable because they felt a way, or they felt like they had to be inauthentic around me. Like I would get around, you know, girls, and they wouldn't order a drink because I wasn't drinking, or my athletes that I worked with, we'd be at the club at the table and they'd be looking like,
What Uncle Dion say? Don't let my confidence offend your insecurities.
But at the end of the day, I still want results and I want that connection. So I would, you know, dabble it in with it. If I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna be there, and I don't mind being even against, and you know, this is hard for me, against some of the things that I don't like doing just to connect with people. I don't mind doing that. And I don't mind being vulnerable. And at this moment, I want to say I was incorrect based on that definition.
Yeah.
I thought it was a semantics argument. I was incorrect. I don't mind being open, but that word, it's weak to me.
I want to ask you a question. That was a great point. You made me think of this question. I want to ask Jeff, because I know you coach a lot of people through some of these challenges. And you obviously also have results in your marriage, right? And it's my opinion, obviously you'll chime in on this, that to have a successful marriage, has to be obviously some level of vulnerability involved with that, right? So the question I was thinking is, I guess I'm curious to know your thoughts on why do you think these terms of vulnerability, or whether we call it being transparent, got this bad rap, right? Because if we think about life from a realistic lens, you can't get through life without putting yourself out there. And in doing so, whether it's dating or jobs, you're going to get told a whole lot more no's than you're looking for that one yes, right? You'll date dozens of people looking for that one person to become that lifetime partner. When you're applying for jobs at a college, you apply 200 places for that one phone call. You closing business deals, I'm sure you get more no's, but it takes that $1 million yes, right? So is it due to the identity of, I just don't want to constantly be told no, and that shoots down to self-esteem? Or what is it that you think keeps us sheltered from putting ourselves out there, when obviously it's a requirement to be successful in any area of life? Whether it's dating, whether it's jobs, whether it's closing business deals, you got to put yourself out there and have them say, hey, no thank you, right? Thank you, but no thanks. But you're looking for that one. You need that one life partner. You need that one job, that one business deal is going to put millions in the bank. What is it that keeps us so afraid of being told no? And when we are afraid of putting ourselves out there, how do we change that?
So I'm going to tell you this. The number one thing, you'll hear me say it all the time. The reason why we're afraid to put ourselves out there is because of people pleasing. When you struggle with the disease to please, anytime you have the disease to please, it is because you have magnified man and their opinion more than you magnify who God created you to be.
Say that again.
Anytime you struggle with people pleasing, it's because you've made man bigger than you've made God. So you've minimized God's idea of you and you've maximized man's idea of you. And this is what we call people idolatry. It's when you start making people the idols in your life, and an idol will tell you what to do, how to act. And this is crazy. When you look at the word shame, because that's what you said, why am I afraid? Being afraid, another synonym of being afraid or dealing is shame.
Right.
Watch this. Here's a trip. Historically, shame has always been associated with idol worship. Because anytime you have an idol, that is an image that you have to hold up to. So whenever I am in a place where I'm afraid to be me, it's because there is an image that I feel like I have to portray in my life. And if I don't hit this image, then my value is only in the image that I'm supposed to portray. Well, where do the images come from? The images come from what I call brules, B-R-U-L-E-S. Some people, BS rules, or they're bullcrap rules. And these are the rules, right? Brules, right? These are the brules that come from man. And men, society have these rules of who you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to show up. And if you don't fall in line with this way, then you just can't be successful. And so when we talk about being afraid to be ourselves, the Bible says that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Jeremiah 1:5, he says, before you were even in your mother's womb, I knew you and I formed you. Jeremiah 29:11, God says, I know the plans that I have for you, plans to give you a hope in the future, plans to give you life and not to harm you. And so what happens is when we're afraid to be us, it's because we are magnifying the opinions of man, minimizing who God's created us to be, which in return causes us to try to compare ourselves to somebody else. But this is where true freedom happens. True freedom happens when you understand that the Bible says that your giftings will make room for you and bring you in front of great men. But notice the key word. Your gifting.
Yours, not theirs.
Not who you're trying to be.
Right.
Not who you're pretending to be, but your gifting. Could it possibly be that the reason why so many people, and this is why my coaching practice, I'm an identity coach for this reason, is because when you don't know your identity, you carry a fake ID. And a fake ID, watch this, a fake ID gets you into where? Places that you ain't supposed to be because it's not the time and you're not mature enough to be there. And so when we carry around fake IDs in relationships or fake IDs in businesses, we walk into rooms and become intimate or have relationships with people we were never supposed to be with. But because you're not authentically being who you are in the place of maturity of where you are, you end up getting burned and hurt. Because you're carrying around a fake ID. So when you ask me this question, the fear of being who you are comes from you trying to tell yourself that man's opinion matters more than God's opinion, and that man are the only people that can get you what God said you could already have. So when I'm afraid to be myself, it's because I don't believe that there's somebody out there who's for me. When I'm afraid to be myself in a business deal, it's because I'm afraid that they're not going to look at me and be who I am. And I'll say this and then we can segue, or we can. The tattoo that I have on my hand right here of my wife's portrait, I got this, and it was actually a promotion for me in my level of security and identity. Because in the space that I'm in, I'm speaking to Fortune 500 companies. I'm coaching CEOs. I am preaching at church conferences. And my fear was that if I got this tattoo on my hand right here of my wife, that people would somehow discredit who I was as an individual because I carried myself in a different manner. And so when I got the tattoo, it was to say this: whether you want to receive me or not, what I carry is not dependent on whether or not you think it's valuable, because the right people are going to find it valuable. So that's where I've been. But here's something that you do, and me and Cam were talking about this in the car. There's a part of me that envies you. And the part that I envy you in is, bruh, you say what you want to say when you want to say, and you'll take on the whole world to be able to make this point. And there's certain things that I'm like, okay, I may agree with what you say, but ain't no way.
Right.
I'm going to post this out. You have a level of confidence and freedom that a lot of the people now, I'm not going to say any names, I'm going to say the names, like Andrew Tate, like Ye, like Kyrie. These individuals have voiced their opinions on these platforms, and it's cost them a lot of things in one sense, but they maintain this level of authenticity.
Right.
In another sense. So we're talking about vulnerability, we're talking about transparency, we're talking about relationships, but now we're segueing into what gives you the freedom to say what you want. And are you even afraid of any backlash from people? Well, I know the answer to that one, but I'm saying like nah. But from that, or who you may exclude from certain statements, how do you manage being open and being a truth teller without being a douchebag?
I think the greatest honor anyone could have is to be a martyr in their attempt to help others. I think to be hung on a cross for something that you know is true, and people will be mad at you, and the very people that are mad at you, you're helping. I think that's the greatest success you could have. It's my parents. It was moms. It was pops. And I think everyone should go back and become whole and complete with their parents, because your parents taught you how to survive. So everything you think, how you act, your patterns go back to mom and dad. And my mom instilled that in belief in me, like you can do anything. And y'all know I look up to my pops a lot. And so I want
shout out pops.
Shout out pops.
Yeah, and moms too.
Yoda
love
and moms. I want my dad's, what my dad put in me, to ring across billions of people. That's why I want to inspire and instruct 1 billion people to live better lives, because the dude is just so smart. Everyone who's around him is like, yo, he's just next level.
His pop is literally like the Yoda, bro. He's like Yoda for sure.
Yeah.
Like he'll listen to me say some crazy stuff and he'll bounce like, okay, dude. And then he'll say something, one sentence, and it'll just hit me deep. Be like, dang, that dude's smart. But it's what they instilled in me. And at the end of the day, if I see something is true, and I don't mind changing my perspective. If I'm incorrect, I'll change and be like, yo, I was incorrect.
Now, mind you, dog, that wasn't how we always used to be. Like we'd be outside like,
what are we talking about?
Right.
Man, get them up.
Get outside then.
Get outside, bro.
You ready to fight
all the time.
Nobody want to be able to vent. So
right.
That day, bro, I love how you said that, man.
And it's not even to be rude or it's really rooted in love. Like I really want people to have the best mental health. I want them to have the best physical health. And if I truly believe that there's no mental problems, there's only bad brains. If I truly believe that you will feel so much better if you work out, if I truly believe that it's about the food and the things you put in, I'm going to push that super hard, because this is, that hit me one time too, because I used to always try to bring people to Jesus. And people would say, Roy, you're casting pearls among swine. And I had this thought one day, I don't know where it came from, but I said, how much do you have to not love someone, to not tell them what they need to do to be better, just because you don't want to annoy them?
Right.
Ooh, hold on, bruh.
Yeah.
Bruh.
Hold on. Let me marinate on that for a second.
Bro.
Hold on.
How much you have to not love someone?
How much? Say that one more time.
How much do you have to not love someone, to not tell them what they need to do to have a better life, just because you don't want to annoy them? And actually, I had that thought because you know how Jehovah's Witnesses come knocking your door, and it's annoying.
Yeah, but that's deep though, because a lot of times we avoid sharing information that people need Not just because you don't want to annoy them, but maybe you don't want to hurt them. Or like you said before, I'm afraid this conversation is going to hurt our friendship.
You leave yourself open for attack.
Right. Because I'm about to hurt your feelings by telling you what you need to hear. And we've all had those talks with each other, right? Yeah. We've had episodes where we've had talks with you like, yo, J.O., until you straighten up, bro, we're good. Yeah. You know, come back around when you get it figured out, bro. And that put a dent in our relationship for a while because we went from hanging out every single day, the three of us, now it's just like me and Dips. And we're not rocking with J.O. like that because he's on some other stuff right now, right? So that goes back to that because those are uncomfortable situations. We worry about people's feelings and people's emotions. So we avoid telling them something that could potentially save their life because you're worried about annoying them or hurting their ego.
And what do all three of us get probably all the time? Man, you always preaching. Man, you always always this. I don't want to hear that right now. I love you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give it to you.
I'm going to give it to you anyway. Do what you want with it.
So then, Kam, do you think people who choose to swallow the black pill, do you think that they ascribe to that mentality because they're afraid of the truth that you aren't a victim, or the truth that you may have had a bad moment, and you got to turn it? What do you think that people who swallow black pill, or let's even take it other side, or people who are blue pill people who always want to be cheery, do you think there's a level of truth that both sides are probably ignoring?
Yeah, I think there is. And I think the reason that people who subscribe to the black pill mentality is because it's easier not to take action. It's so much easier to have a victim mindset than it is to say, I'm coming up out of this situation. I'm going to formulate some type of plan to turn around my situation, right? It's so much easier to have people reach out to you and say, I'm so sorry. And, you know, poor you. And yeah, poor me. And life is whooping me. And everybody around me is doing so great. And I'm just sitting here, you know, basking in this victim mentality, right? It's so much easier to say life hates me. God forgot about me. God's not taking any action in my life. You know, and like, I think if you went and talk to anyone, I would say at any point in their life, they're probably older than 40 years old. They're going to say there was a season in their life where they feel God forgot about them.
Yeah, everybody probably.
Right. And there's
Jesus.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And the thing is that I think when we hear this black pill mentality, or we spun it and said black pill moment, like we said, a lot of times that moment doesn't feel like a moment, right? And it's like, it's not that I'm having a bad month or a bad year. Some people go through seasons, 6 years, where I feel like God might have tried to put me in a position, teach me a lesson. I feel like he left me there. He forgot about me, right? I got covered up. You know, we all go through that at some point in our lives. All three of us can sit here and tell our stories, and a lot of us, you know, already have. But I think it's so much easier to just accept that your life is not what you want it to be, and that it's so much harder to take action. Now, we can spin that and say for the blue pill person, maybe they're not as realistic, right? Oh, everything's happy-go-lucky. God's going to turn around the situation. And you get in arguments all the time, right? I've had relationships with people where I'm the blue pill and they're the black pill. No, Cameron, it's not going to get better, right? I've been here for 6 months. Everyone else is so happy around me, but I'm in this situation. And yet I'm sitting there like, just keep praying. You know, like people have told me how when life is so bad, or Cameron, look how sick you are. You're right, but I woke up this morning.
Hello.
You know what I mean? It was storming last night. My life's not perfect, but I had a roof over my head. I had dinner. There's people that slept in the rain last night.
Gratitude.
It's gratitude. So for me, it always comes back to gratitude. And you have to take action. I'm not a believer in standing around and just waiting for someone to come and save you. Right. You know, I always tell people control the controllables. Well, I'm waiting on God to turn my situation around. Okay, but what are you doing in the meantime?
He waiting on you to move.
He's waiting on you to make movements, right? Take action. So like we talk about, move those mountains, right? Have that faith of a mustard seed and move the mountain that's in front of you, bro.
Trust that journey.
Trust the journey, bro. That's what it comes down to. So, you know, I think it was even Dion. I think you might have posted a speech that he just gave his football team recently, right? Yeah. And he says everybody gets an opportunity, but you have to take advantage of those opportunities. And while you're sitting there facing your hands and you're crying every day, you're missing these opportunities going by that could potentially change your situation, right? So pick your head up when you're looking down and you're in self-pity. You know, it's like, do you want to be healed? Do you want these opportunities? Do you want to change your situation around? Or are you just comfortable being the victim? Yeah. Because it's going to require some action on your part. Yeah. You know, God's willing. Are you willing to do your part of it?
They just swallowed the black pill. They don't want to. I wanted to touch on one thing about vulnerability that maybe might help people is people that use vulnerability to suck other people for their energy.
Ooh.
Those people who be like, I'm bad, I'm this.
Always got a sad story.
And so the sad story, so
Right.
the caretakers come to the rescue, but they're really just sucking that person for their energy, like a
leech.
Like a leech.
Living off of you.
They
Energy
living off of
leech.
people.
Yeah.
Right.
So people who use sadness, vulnerability, negativity to steal your energy so that you come to help rescue them.
Everyone's got that friend, that family member. How you doing, Uncle? Oh, well, I got this going on, and my bone's been hurting, and I can't walk, and I just lost my job. Social Security check ain't came yet. I'm negative in the balance. So we all deal with those people, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we deal with those people, bro? When someone's draining you, what do you do? That's a good question.
So y'all know I'm Mr. National Geographic.
Right.
I love National Geographic. That's me. I'm the guy who's in there like, here you see this wild honey, right? Like,
Right.
I'm that guy. When you have a leech that's attached to you in the wild, the quickest way to get the leech off of you is to use fire. It's heat.
Mm-hmm.
The quickest way to get rid of an emotional leech in your life is to apply fire to them. And what is fire? Fire is truth. Because a leech wants to suck off of your blood what gives you life. So if you're constantly giving them, hey, you can do it. Hey, you know what? You want to do it. When how do you know I want y'all to listen to me. How do you know if somebody's an emotional leech in your life? It's when you get off the phone or you leave their presence and you feel more drained than you feel energized.
Man.
It's a sign you just been encountered by energy vampire or energy leech, right?
Yeah.
And in any situation, whether it's a vampire or whether it's a leech requires heat, the vampire requires light, and it begins to burn up. In other words, light is truth.
Stop feeding them.
100%. You stop feeding them, but you apply truth, which is heat. You put the heat on them. So say, listen, oh man, things just aren't good. I'm tired of how this person's treating me. I'm tired of my job not telling me what I'm worth. Okay, well then what are you doing to change it? Well, man, my life is... No. You are where you are in life because of the choices and the decisions you make. Well, you don't understand what happened to me as a kid. You don't understand the abuse that's happened in my life. Hold on. I'm sorry what happened to you as a child happened. And I'm sorry you went through that abuse. But how long are you going to keep that tape on replay when the person has already moved on? I've dealt with abuse growing up. I've dealt with all different forms of people hurting you, saying things, lying to you, physical abuse, all of those different things. But if I continued to keep myself there and play on that sad story, I had cats who told me, get up. And you mentioned something, man, about I love this. You said even with Jesus, he says, do you even want to be made well?
Yeah.
So trip on this. I preached this sermon one time, and in Matthew 5 is the man at the pool of Bethesda. And this is a place where the pool goes, and people who are sick go by this pool. And they say at a certain time, an angel stirs up the water, and whoever was in that water first would get healed. He says there was a man who was there with an infirmity for over 30 years. 30 years. I want you to understand this. He brought himself to the pool for 30 years. After 30 years, you would kind of know what season the angel was going to come because he said at a certain season, which means there was a time frame.
I'm out there waiting.
You would be at least put yourself in a position where you can dip your big toe into the water as soon as the angel got it, right? So Jesus comes by and he says, and seeing how long the man had been in this condition, he asks the question, do you even want to be made well? I want you, guys, look.
Come on. Ooh. If you don't pick that matter up, come on.
The reason why this is so powerful is because if the man was actually sick, in all the other scriptures, Jesus says, do you want me to heal you? But it says this man in the initial text didn't say that the man had a sickness. The word was illness. So when I looked up the word illness in the Greek, it is the Greek word asthenia. The word asthenia means to become overly or wrongly dependent upon somebody else, preventing you from doing what you desire to do.
Okay.
Watch this. So when Jesus came to him and says, do you even want to be made well? That word well in the Greek doesn't mean healed. It means to be set free. So we asked the man who had been in this condition for 30 years, do you even want to be set free? Listen to the condition, asthenia, being overly or wrongly dependent, pop up. I do, but whenever the water is stirred up, I have nobody to take me to the water to go get my healing, and somebody comes in front of me. But in the beginning of the text, it never said that the man couldn't walk. But he was dependent upon somebody else to try to get him to the place of his healing, until Jesus walked around and said, do you even want to be free from this condition?
Right.
Because your victim mentality is actually serving you. And from the moment he did it, he says, I do. And Jesus says, get up, pick up your mat and leave.
Yeah.
In that moment, he realized that he was waiting for everybody else to give him permission to live and to move on and to be able to hope again and to be able to dream again. But the moment he realized that God already gave him permission was the moment he picked the mat up and moved on. But the question I asked was, why did he pick up the mat? And the reason why I realized he picked up the mat is because somebody would come after him and lay down in a place that they were supposed to pass through. And so when we take on the black pill mentality, we don't have the luxury to swallow that pill because we've got children, we've got relatives, we've got people around us who may come to that place. And if they see it's comfortable and there's a mat there and we keep swallowing that pill, they just going to reach over and start taking it. And now you're dealing with what Willie Lynch said, even in the slave letters, of the goal when you're breaking a slave is not to focus on the generation that you're breaking right now. In the Willie Lynch letters, he said, focus on the generation to come. Because if you break them bad enough, they'll break their offspring in the infant stages to where you won't even have to do it.
And the only thing that will wake them up and crash down everything
Come on.
to get in their
Say it,
head
Dips.
is if they find out who
Say
they
it.
really are.
Me,
Do not let them see this letter, because they will know who they really are, and then all of this will come crashing down.
Bruh, listen, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So here's my question for you, Cam. We had that little church moment.
Man, I'm over your mind blown.
Yo,
Like, yeah.
There are three ways to give. You can give in person.
Right.
That's how they hit you with the organ. You know what I'm saying? They hit you with that.
Right. Cash app is up on the screen.
Right. So here's my question. I think I dipped myself a little too low. I'm over here.
Yeah, come up a little bit. There you go.
So here's my question to you though, bruh. Is how does a person shift their mind from believing a lie to believing truth? And let me preference this by saying, because we're going to end on your note. You were told something that was a fact.
Right.
The facts were that you weren't going to get a transplant. Facts were they said it doesn't look good. Facts said that given your circumstance, there was no light. But then you would begin to believe another truth. So how do you move from that to where you start giving yourself a new truth?
So I think our reality becomes what we're willing to accept. It's that simple. It's that simple. So if I say that $100 million you want in your account, it's not going to happen. Do you know the small percentage of millionaires in the U.S.? Do you know how many black men are millionaires? Do you know how many millionaires there are under the age of 45? And you're like, damn, he just hit me with the facts. All right. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's now his reality. He's walking around. My reality is I'll never become a millionaire because the facts aren't in my favor. Black pill mentality, right? So for me, like you said, I was given an unfavorable diagnosis, 28 years old. 10, 15 years for a transplant. You got this disease, probably going to come back. Highly probable chances that the organ's going to reject. All these things, right? I didn't accept it. That wasn't my reality. So, like we mentioned, I wasn't going to set up a permanent foundation in a season of my life. And I was very confident that I'm in a season.
Oh, wait, hold on. I'm not going to set up a permanent foundation.
In just a season, right? I'm passing through. I'm passing through. So there's lessons in this journey, right? There's wisdom that's going to come in this journey. And like we've mentioned before, people relate to stories. Now, it's vulnerability. And I learned this because I was 4 years into my illness before anyone outside my immediate friends even knew that I was sick. I had to learn what vulnerability was.
Yes, sir. I remember that.
Right? By the time people found out I was sick, when did you get diagnosed? 5 years ago. right? I've been battling this behind the scenes for 5 years. But it was because I had to put myself out there. Well, what did you do to cause it? Right? Well, what happened? What are the doctors saying? How long are they giving you? Blah, blah, blah. All these different questions I didn't want to answer at that time. But what I realized by making yourself susceptible to feedback is that 9 times out of 10, what you get in honesty is that you get a lot of love. You get support, right? The support was crazy. We started getting all these different organizations reaching out.
Yep.
So that's what I would say, man. Don't camp out in a season where you're just passing through. And just keep in mind that what you choose to accept is what becomes your reality.
Man, with that being said, we just going to close out this podcast episode. We'll be here for another. What you choose
to accept in your life is what becomes your reality.
Man, I love that.
Man, like, comment, subscribe.
Yeah, make sure you
y'all.
do that. And listen, make sure to follow us on Instagram.
All platforms.
Give me your Instagram handle.
Roy, ROY_red with 2 Ds, REDD.
At Jeff T. Osborne, JEFF, as in Tom, OSBORNE.
And I'm Cameron with the K_Prasad, PERSAUD. Loving on y'all.
Hey, appreciate you guys. Until next time.
Bro, man, let's go.
Peace.